For many C-suite executives, protecting their brand's reputation is a top priority. In an age of misinformation and disinformation, content, oh my God, content. I'm sorry. Let's read that again.
We're going to redo that. Sorry,
Redo
Declan.
that, yeah. Okay. I got it now. I just rewrote it. Just a touch. Oh, are we still recording?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. For many C-suite executives, protecting their brand's reputation is a top priority. In an age where misinformation and disinformation is becoming increasingly common, leadership teams need to act fast to prepare for harmful effects on business. In this episode of the Can You Hear Me podcast, co-hosts Eileen Rochford and Rob Johnson discuss navigating the Misinformation Highway. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Can You Hear Me podcast. I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications.
And I'm Eileen Rochford, CEO of the Harbinger Group, a marketing and strategy firm. For many C-suite executives, protecting their brand's reputation is a top priority. In an age of misinformation and disinformation content becoming increasingly common, leadership teams need to act fast to prepare for harmful effects on their businesses. So today we will discuss navigating the Misinformation Highway, where bots, influencers, and propagandists rule the road.
Got to put them in their place. We'll try. We'll do our very best. To do this, we want to first credit Gini Dietrich, the CEO of Arment Dietrich Public Relations in Chicago, for prompting this episode topic. Her blog, How Comms Pros Can Counter Misinformation, brings up multiple essential points, many of which we're pondering and also reading about. For instance, she talks about misbelief and misinformation. You've seen it time and again, where people share information that is clearly fake, but since it backs up someone's point of view or belief system, they share it anyway. We saw this commonly leading up to and since the recent election. That's a terrific example, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was so much baked into there. We can hit on that when we get to the social part of this conversation. I think in particular, there'll be tons to talk about regarding the election.
But it is amazing how people just they'll say, well, it lines up. It's good for me. This is what I want to share. And, getting the facts right used to matter a long time ago. And now it's not you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's those are my facts, Eileen. And you might say, well, those are my facts, Rob. I mean, I don't think we would do that, but that's how that conversation goes sometimes.
Yeah, increasingly, no doubt about it. And it's so perplexing and difficult for rational minds to really kind of, wrap their brains around. When I think about the harmful effects of misinformation on businesses in particular, and how quickly that threat is escalating, it just makes me think about the C-suite executives we typically are speaking to, I guess, on our podcast, because and I know you share this, Rob, every leadership team to know that they should be preparing for this actively and on an ongoing basis. And I think that's what we're going to attempt to cover today in this show, because this isn't going away. It's getting worse and worse and worse. 4 years ago, I don't think any of us anticipated that what happened in this election year would have escalated to the degree that it has, but that is spreading everywhere on the internet, in terms of where in social media platforms where information is sought by people, today. So it's not going away. I think it's the top business issue for leaders today, and it should be at the tippy top for work that they put their minds to in 2025, because it directly affects customer preference choices. It, as we said, affects brand reputation, all of those things. It's so serious that I think CEOs really need to educate themselves about why is this here now and how can it impact not just reputation, but also sales and all kinds of things, relative to their business. And we're going to dig into a few of the books and resources that will be useful in understanding how people process information.
I mean, think about being a CEO right now, being one of the CEOs that's been on our show, or you are a CEO, so you don't have to imagine it. You are one. Imagine having to have the real things that are in front of you, that are huge challenges on a daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly basis. And then imagine having all of a sudden all this stuff that isn't real that might get you. So yes, you have to worry about what's right in front of you, the real stuff. And then you have to worry about the stuff that may or may not happen that's not real at all. That's very daunting.
Yeah. And it used to just be that, it was crisis preparedness. And crises usually would happen because an employee did something wrong, or a team member did something wrong, or a product malfunctioned. Those were the types of crises. This is the potential for completely false information about an organization to just be perpetuated with nefarious intent. Often, we know that's disinformation. And how you can be prepared for that can feel almost impossible, but absolutely, at a minimum, overwhelming. So that's why I appreciated that Gini wrote this article from the perspective of what communications professionals need to do. You and I are going at it from what C-suite executives need to do today.
Yeah. A little bit different, yeah.
Yeah. There was one book that Gini had in her article that we'll highlight. She called it, or it is titled, Misbelief by Dan,
Yeah.
Ariely, Ariely. There's a real good section in her article about that, but we'll highlight some of it because coincidentally, I also read that book. I share the same fears, I think, that Gini does, same nightmares. So, and we must be similar in that we both, when I'm faced with things that scare the hell out of me, I want to go learn everything that I can about them and try, because I think that's the control side, of my personality type. The other book that she didn't mention, but I wanted to highlight because it was equally helpful for me in understanding kind of what's going on, especially in this election cycle. It's called Invisible Rulers, and that was written by Renee Diresta, Diresta. Renee is with the Stanford Internet Observatory, although I think I should say was with, because I believe a lawsuit shut that down this summer and crushed it, unfortunately. But her book, both of these books are incredible resources. I'm highlighting them now at the top of the show because often CEOs, their first reaction is, I have to go learn about this as well. These are great resources,
Sure.
Particularly for understanding how people process information. That's, I think, in Misbelief in particular, there's quite a bit of the psychological side of things, like, because rational people think, why would you ever believe that? That's a lie. There's not even like a remote possibility that that's accurate. Why are you perpetuating that? First of all, but secondly, how come you believe it in the first place? So it goes into the psychology of how people are kind of in this environment predisposed to, or are susceptible or vulnerable to things that aren't true, merely because they tug at fears that they may have, kind of buried deep within their psyche. Yeah. And so that's the activator. It's, and there's a lot of fear right now, isn't there?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So it makes it pretty easy. So I highly recommend both of those books. There's a little bit from Renee's book in particular that I found pretty interesting, but we'll dig into that next because it's the social media section in particular could be juicy in our conversation today. So, relative to this topic, let's move on to the social media effect here. Because I've been in this industry long enough, and you certainly have too, Rob. The business of news and communications, when people in communications could kind of help out an organization or business if they faced a crisis by doing things that were far more standard and straightforward. The classic op-ed in a newspaper media outlet, for example, to support your own opinion or even an initiative. That's okay today, but it's not really the full answer. We're going to talk about why it can't be next, but let's stick on social media, because now in social, info just spreads like wildfires, like the wildfires that are burning all over our country now, frankly. But it hits every channel almost at the same time. It increases in veracity with speed we've never seen before, and controlling it can be really, really difficult.
That is the scary part because, yeah, we think about, op-eds still happen, but it's just, I mean, it's just a pretty small tool in the toolbox now. And what you're talking about, multiple social channels, being able to blast things out simultaneously. And so if you're on the receiving end of that, especially misinformation, as we're talking about today, it it is head spinning because it's like you're trying to stop the water leak, and it's like, well, okay, stop that leak, what about this one? And it's just it is daunting because it happens so immediate, and because it has such great reach, and because of the reason we talked about earlier, which is people are inclined to believe, if it's their belief system, they're all in. They're like, these are the facts. And they may not even research it or look into it. You talked a little bit about, looking people up or doing research. And I think that's one of the key components too, is you see something, you're like, well, let me dig a little deeper on that. I'm not sure if that's true. Most
Yeah.
people don't even do that. They're just like, they're the facts. I read it on whatever their social channel is, got to be the truth, or they want it to be the truth.
Yeah, it's that they want it to be. Absolutely. Fair point. The gasoline on the fire in social, and this goes in the book Invisible Rulers, by Renee um, uh, DiResta. I don't know why I have a little block on her name, DiResta. Um, she talks about the gasoline being the influencers, and that they're paid by their platforms to bring in bigger and bigger audiences. And their incentive is to grow their audience, but also to keep their attention longer. Because, in the breaks is when the advertising gets sneaks in, right? So the sponsors are happy the longer that they stick around. And DiResta talks about these 5 categories of influencers. So she says they're entertainers, explainers, besties, idols, and gurus. But regardless of the type, that the above all goal, no matter who they are, what they're talking about, whether they see themselves as ethical or not, it's engagement. And as influencers match their topics to their compensation, their paycheck, they quickly realize, oh, the algorithm rewards me when I talk about these things. It has the highest, residence and engagement rates. I'm going to keep steering in that direction. And that isn't healthy because when you couple that with, this is another thing that DiResta asserts in her research. It's the combination of influencer plus algorithm plus crowd is where the scary stuff happens. And there's some great case studies that she goes into how outright lies are spread, but it's often early on in kind of like the catching the wave on social media. It is the influencer or multiple influencers who started it, and then they just kept pouring more and more gasoline on it by cutting that content into all kinds of different slices and dices and continuing to put it up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that the algorithm responds to that, and that creates this disinformation kind of firestorm. So that's why it happens so fast. And that's why I wanted to mention that a core component of that is the influencer. And many brands are involved with lots and lots of influencers right now.
And we're not saying influencers are bad.
Not at all. Not at all. It's
What
just
we are
knowledge.
saying, though, you just outlined the way the way information is spread. It used to be spread by somebody who would be a impartial source. And so you could say, oh, that must be, or you'd look into it and say that must be true. But that's not the goal of the influencer. You just outlined it perfectly. Their goal is to get clicks, to be influential, to have people stick around, and to keep consuming whatever it is that they're sharing. And that's how they get paid. I even see it in mainstream media sometimes when people are criticizing an on-air, opinion person, or who's giving a kind of crazy take that people are like, wow, that's kind of out of left field, or even somebody who's writing, an opinion piece or a blog, and people are like, you're just trying to get clicks. You're just trying to get clicks, and it's like, that's the new rating system. When I did, when I did TV, everybody's worried about, the ratings, the Nielsen ratings. And I know they still are to a degree, but now people, to get influence, now that the world of information has shifted from, say, news, more traditional news, to this, it's, how's your audience? How are you engaging them? And nobody says, is that true? Like there's nobody at some of these outlets, or the customer, the people who are engaging the influencer, that's saying, is all this true? Nobody's saying that, are they? They're just like, they just want influence. I'm not saying I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush though either, but I'm saying in instances like the ones we're talking about with misinformation, I would say that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the intent is simply, oh, that's a wave I can ride, and I'm going to get a bigger paycheck as a consequence. I don't
Yep.
care if it's not
Yep.
true. I don't care if it's
And nobody else
damaging.
cares either, right? Like they're
Yeah.
saying, they may be saying we don't care, and the audience is like, we don't care.
Mm-hmm.
The
So
audience
just
used to care.
understand,
They don't care.
right? Just understanding, I think, from the leadership team, C-suite executive, perspective, that the role of influencers in all of this, and why it's important to understand that, and be very careful about any influencers you might align yourself with, in your partnerships, whether it's in marketing or co-hosting events, whatever the case may be. Just be certain that you're really seeing what kind of content are they putting out there, and what control do you have over any content that might involve you. So just a little note for, as a sidebar action item, if you will. But that book, Invisible Rulers, Renee goes into it in great depth, and I highly recommend it again, simply because understanding the beast that you're dealing with is core to being able to create a strategy where you can, protect your organization, as well as a plan for what to do if it were to happen to you.
And there it is.
Yeah.
It's everybody's sitting here going, who's
Oh, we'll get
listening to
there.
this may be saying, oh my gosh, they've outlined the problem beautifully. Now, how do we try to
Yeah.
solve the problem?
Yeah. We
Before
got
we
some of
get
that
to
today.
some of those more actionable things, Eileen,
Yeah.
we cannot understate the challenges of AI in
Yeah.
this scenario. We
Mhm.
also know the challenges oftentimes produce opportunities. The fact is, with AI, you can create fake content, fake picture, fake quote, anything. And that fake content, it puts a client in the crosshairs. It's incumbent upon the communications professional with those folks to make sure they have the scenarios built in where you can debunk the AI fallacies. And some people
Mhm.
might be saying that sounds like a lot more work. And we're saying, yeah, it is
It is.
work,
That's absolutely the case.
but there is a pathway here to sort of to try to blunt that, because AI can create whatever you want it to,
Mhm.
content wise.
Yeah. So, if you're not investing in the type of monitoring tools that look for misrepresentations, visual and otherwise, of your organization, all of your intellectual property, that's absolutely a must right now. Any organization, frankly, of any size. There's different price points for these kinds of tools, and we'll link to a few of them
Yeah.
in the show notes. But as you're thinking about 2025 and the investments you need to make in this area, that we've identified as probably one of your very top urgent priorities to address, in the coming year, you're going to have a tool like that, or several, that can help you track any misrepresentation, visually or otherwise. Even going beyond just your brand logo, images that involve your brand, to faces of your people, especially your leadership team members, making sure they're not being superimposed on images that put them in compromising situations. things that manufacture that use their voices, because you can access, your voices from lots of
Oh,
content you probably
it's
already
so easy.
got out there. So that can be reproduced quite easily as well. So setting up all the tools to look for that and make sure that it's not happening to you, you're not becoming a victim of that, is essential, frankly, as a next step, no doubt about it. And
You know,
it's hard to stay on top of it for sure.
it is hard to stay on top of it. And let me raise a point. And I think we saw it a fair amount in the election when there'd be something that was clearly fake. And somebody would say, you run it through their AI tool and figure out that picture was fake or that never happened, that incident, that was all made up. And it kind of poured the water on the fallacy fire that was burning, right?
Mhm.
But let me ask you this question. I don't know if you know the answer to it. Is because what you're going to say, if you run something through your AI tool and you say, oh, that's clearly fake, and here's how, and you can even outline it, here's how, that's fake. What's going to keep the person that's perpetuating the lie to be like, oh, that's not fake. That's real. You're lying. You're fake,
Yeah.
because you don't want to get into like a he said, she said, back and forth kind of thing. But I feel like these monitoring tools did their jobs pretty well during the election when there would be things that were not true that were being put out there. Does that make sense? And then I'm asking a question too. So you're like, Rob's, all over the map here.
Nothing new. So what is the question? Just recap it for me,
The
because I think I
question
did lose
is
the
the
thread.
question is when you run it through your AI tool
Yeah.
and it says clearly fake, and here's how it's fake, and so you put out that fire. What's to keep the other side? The other side doesn't want you to know they're the ones that perpetuated the lie, so they're not going to be getting into the he said, she said, right? They're trying to do it stealth, like, let's see if that fake picture passes muster. And then Eileen and her AI tool for her client said, no, 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 that's completely not true, and here are the reasons why, and whatever. That seemed to have ended it because I'm guessing the people that are perpetuating the lie don't want to step out and say, well, that's the truth, because they want to stay below radar, right?
Yeah. I think that the primary things to focus on in, an instance like that is to identify as best you can where it's coming from, who posted it, what organization might be behind it.
Yep.
Get as far as you can down that rabbit hole as possible. There are, again, ways that you can identify some of these markers for sure, and get your legal team involved as quickly as you can, because they're going to be your best line of defense in many of these situations. Is if it becomes more of a reputational crisis where there's a conspiracy about something, like Ginny cited in her article, the company Wayfair, when they faced a situation not long ago where there was just this rumor that was kind of, it wouldn't die on the internet about why their uh, dressers, I think, or credenzas, like certain types of furniture, were so much less expensive. And if you can believe this, I know it seems ridiculous to the rational mind, but the theory that was being perpetuated was that they were trafficking human children inside of
Inside them.
these furniture pieces as they were being shipped for real.
Yeah.
And so they were making their profit off of the trafficking, and
Not the
therefore they
furniture.
discounted the furniture so that would move quickly and things of that nature. Right. There's a whole case study on that we'll link in the show notes. But in a situation like that, that's more reputational, and you're going to have an entire team, almost an army, involved. Particularly, we'll get to this in a second, but um, your own employees can be an awesome line of defense in this regard too. Uh, Equipping them with consistent messaging, equipping all of your partners who if you go down, they go down, lining them up. We'll talk about some of these things too, but you get the idea. When it's reputational, it's one thing. If it's their one-off things all day long for many, many brands that they're just playing whack-a-mole with, but that's the cost of doing business. And frankly, that's a new hidden cost. That's real.
That is a new hidden cost for
It
sure.
is a new hidden cost, no doubt about it. Your legal fees are going to go up, and your tool fees for tracking and monitoring, for misuse of anything related to your brand or your people, That's another investment that you absolutely have to make. You're probably going to have to add more staff in the marketing side or information technology side of your businesses. All of those things are realities. So,
No doubt.
yeah.
Good stuff. No, that's I
Yes.
mean, that's kind of where I was heading, and you articulated it well.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. Um, so being proactive is also imperative. Monitoring is not enough in this new age. And I think what we can talk about here in terms of proactivity, um, doing that crisis planning, which in this new world isn't just the far fetched scenarios. These are scenarios that could happen honestly to any organization. Forcing yourselves to go through the practice of identifying the possible scenarios and developing messaging. You're going to have all kinds of different tailored messaging that might relate or that might need to be utilized based on these different scenarios, that you brainstorm. And probably you need to go through that, not just with um, your inside folks, but certainly some outside counsel would be beneficial to really,
Absolutely.
because, the more minds, the better.
And well, and
Particularly the
frankly,
most
with
paranoid minds you can find.
with the council, whether it be internal or external, there's a lot of these things that you have to run it by them anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, we're gonna go send this message out. It's like if it's sensitive enough, you got to make sure the attorneys get involved. And some people are like, oh, really? And it's like, yeah, really. So whether they're internal or external, they probably need to see it anyway. So getting those eyes on it early is a good idea.
Yeah. I want to make one point here that I think is very relevant, that misinformation thrives in a void, right? It's the absence of positive information that often creates the environment in which people can more readily accept a fallacy. So remember that misinformation thrives in a void,
Yeah.
because the antidote to that is the active, consistent, authentic communications from your own organization. So again, that's another hidden cost. You need to communicate more now, more than you ever have. You need to have more reasons to communicate, and you need to be consistently committing, to and adhering to a plan for just a drumbeat of communications, if you will. That's like I said, it's authentic and positive. That's really what matters here. Um, it's like I think of it as the more that you invest in and commit to creating positive stories, information about your organization, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, it does not matter. You're building up like layers in your shield.
That's a
So,
great analogy. Yep.
yeah, it's like armor. So you're going to be so much better able to deflect whatever, bullets or spears or whatever gets shot at you
Mm-hmm.
in the digital world. So um, because it's that consistent sharing of, this is who we are, this is what we do, these are our values, here's how we live those values, here's stories of human beings who are part of our organization who live those values, or the people we serve who are impacted by our choice to conduct business in this way. All of those things are the little seeds that are sowing, trust sprouts that are going to shoot up, and they're going to grow, and they're going to thrive. So that's I just mixed a bunch of different things in there,
No,
but I think you get the
listen,
idea.
no, the mixed metaphors, I was following along and I was like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. I think what
Thanks.
you're also saying here is by having a cadence, a regular cadence with your messaging, whether it's, external to customers directly or clients, whether it's social, the fact that you're there putting out the content that is positive, that not only is it positive, but it's from your point of view. It is content that you have created that defines the company in the way you want it defined. And if
Mhm.
somebody goes and spreads misinformation about you, if you don't have a cadence or if you don't have a presence online, then all of a sudden it's like, well, gosh, I haven't seen anything that they've done in months. This must be true. These people are hiding behind whatever.
Yeah,
as
that's
opposed
absolutely
to you're creating regular content that is relevant to the audience, that is positive, that is done with your point of view in mind.
true.
And
Mhm.
so if somebody were to try to sneak some misinformation in there, I'm not saying you don't have to deal with it. You would, but the fact that you have this history of content creation and of regular messaging is so important. So I just wanted to take what you said, which I fully agree with, and kind of give it just a, take it down a little bit different path there in
Mhm.
terms of making it relevant to everybody else, because your multiple metaphors were awesome.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if I can come up with a few more of those zingers. So yeah, I guess the closing point in this part of our discussion is you're you've got to build and strengthen continuously. Make those muscles bigger and bigger when it comes to establishing
Yep.
your credibility, which is directly connected to trust. So, um, I guess the other thing I would like to say is that you can't just tell human stories. You have to use data to prove things too. So you've got to have whatever, data it is that, is the thing in your world. Remember, you've got to prove and
Yep.
show, but it's the human stories that create the opportunities to connect and relate. So
The
it's a secret
stats and the
sauce for sure.
stories.
Yeah.
I tell this to clients all the time, and I'm sure, and I know you do too. It's
Yeah.
like you got to back it up with facts, stats, and then you have to make it relatable. You can't just sit here and tell them what the issue is. You have to be able to tell the story around that fact, that stat, and
Mhm.
I think that's very important. So
Definitely.
we have some takeaways here from Gini Dietrich's article, and while we pointed out some of the perils of this newer, faster-paced digital landscape, there are also opportunities for innovation, new tools to verify information that we've been talking about, improved monitoring that could alert you to potential problems, and building strong networks of trustworthy partners that can offer truth and combat the fake content. So we talked about the
Mhm.
two previous, but the last one there, you touched upon it briefly, I think, Eileen, about the partners, the people that can, the network of people that can help you make your case.
And that's a big world when we use
Oh,
that
sure
word,
it is.
network and partners. Um, Certainly those you conduct business with. So, um, so if you think about financial services organization, depending on what sector they're in, they're going to have lots of different companies they do business with, banks, different oh gosh, insurance providers, most likely. I'm trying to think of even my own financial advisor as a great example. He's just got so many different partners. When you think of all those types of, they're like the the octopus, tentacles that kind of come
Yeah.
out from the body of your organization. They can all be swatting at your enemies on your behalf to ward off threats. So create an inventory as part of your, preparedness plan and make sure that you have real solid, healthy relationships with them. Maybe even as part of that consistent communications that you're creating, you bring them into a lot of that content production so that it doesn't look to the outside world as inauthentic. So you're, kind of inoculating ahead of time. Yeah, we do business with these people. We have extremely healthy relationships, and we've conducted research together. We've written white papers together, whatever the case may be. Just,
Hmm.
some examples of how you can do that. That's one kind of network you can activate. Another one is, and I do want to delve into this a little deeply, is your employees. This is key. So part of the problem right now, and this is for everybody, but I think it applies because it's within your direct control, C-suite folks. Um, Everybody is lacking in critical thinking skills right now. Everybody, the entire world. So if you want to be in a position where you can activate your employees to help, you need to start putting some effort into developing their critical thinking skills so that they can help you identify things that are false. That's just think about that, right? So putting some effort into improving critical thinking skills across the board for everyone who works in your organization could pay off significantly for you in the long run. Another thing is you want to have them all be trained. Invest in some more training. So in two areas is where I think the trainings are most important. The first is they need to understand the story of your organization, its origin story. What do you do today? Who are the people you serve? Like in their bones, right? You need to make sure that they know it, they feel it, they believe it, and they can talk about it authentically as an individual human being. I don't think enough companies do that, frankly, and certainly not to the degree that you would need them to be prepared to do that on your behalf if something very bad happened
Or
to your
when you're
organization.
onboarding someone, a new employee, they're not a lot of times getting that professional development that they need. I wouldn't even call that professional development. I would just call that
No.
onboarding. Like even the
Mhm.
onboarding, here's who we are, here's who we
Mhm.
stand for. I mean, they know about the company, but did they know about the company? And a lot of
Right.
times these younger people or these newer hires don't know about the company. And then you talked about professional development, areas of training that you see is beneficial. And I'll let you finish that thought in a sec. But that people are like, oh, professional development, it's like it's very important. So we're really talking
Yeah.
about two different things here: the proper onboarding and then the professional development. Please
Yeah,
continue.
the continuation. Yeah. Because I mean, I work with organizations, we all do here at the Harbinger Group, many of whom we've had very like long relationships with, 18 years, 19 years, kind of long. And people we work with have been there longer, 26, 27, 28 years. You're going to forget and you're going to need a refresher. Anybody who works anywhere at least once a year needs to have the opportunity to hear the story, tell the story because the story evolves and you want them to know that in its current authentic state
Yep.
always. They just need to feel it and know it in their bones. Um, the other aspect of this, so I covered critical thinking. That's a thing that you can bring in into your
Sure.
organization as part of professional development. Message training, and that means your story of your company. And then if a crisis were to occur, make sure that they have, the talking points of how to counter it. That's related to messaging. But then the third thing is this. Again, imagine the scenario of where you want to activate your employees to be part of your line of defense should some misinformation or disinformation situation arise for your company. They need to have strong digital networks. What if they don't? If you're not investing in helping them understand how to grow their digital networks on LinkedIn in particular, and making that maybe even part of their growth plan
Yeah.
with a measurable outcome,
Some people
quarterly.
have reviews. You're talking about a growth plan. We've talked about that before. That's
Yeah.
two different things there, but that's very important to talk about.
Yeah. So the idea of it's not lip service, but you're going to give them whatever those trainings look like. LinkedIn offers quite a bit of them. They come into organizations and give them, but then having someone on point on your staff who is helping them. Like, okay, let's learn how to write some posts. Let's use some shortcuts to be able to do that. Let's think about um, how often are you looking at what the company posts and are you resharing that content regularly? How are you, when you're thinking about networking, how are you, what practice do you have in place so that when you go to an event, whether it's virtual or in person, and you're interacting with people in our industry, are you then taking the step to connect with them on LinkedIn and establish, some level of relationship with them? That's how networks grow. And if you don't make that an important part and tell your folks, this is a priority for us for a whole bunch of reasons. Here's one of the reasons why it benefits you as a professional, benefits us as an organization in terms of social amplification. And then you give them the time and resource to learn and to do. So I don't think people think about that enough. They say activate your employees. Well, if you're not teaching them how to do
Right.
that well, they're not going to be able to do so. So it does
And they have to know the
require actual
expectation
training.
is there.
Yeah.
Again, just a
There's
lot of you were talking
incentivizing
about this
too.
early on in this part of the discussion about people, the critical thinking isn't there because people would just want you to tell them what to do. They want sometimes, not all times, but sometimes in recent years, people want to be order takers. Like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And what you're talking about is being a critical thinker, figuring out how to solve that problem, and then coming to the boss and saying, here's how I, solve that problem. And if they've been trained properly, they got that continuing education, they're going to have greater success in being critical thinkers. So just something to think
Yeah,
about.
for sure, for sure. It bleeds into every aspect of performance, frankly,
Mhm.
for anyone who works for any organization. Critical thinking is core to success. Just don't, nobody wants order takers anymore. So you got to develop
No,
those critical thinking skills, especially to help you
absolutely. All right,
in
before we
this
head on out, I
industry.
know you have a couple of notes you want to share with our audience here about resources, to help them along on this journey.
Yeah. Um, well, I know we've talked about two books,
Yeah.
Misbelief and Invisible Rulers. Those are two books that we'll put links to their author pages, and you can buy it however you'd want to. Um, and I will also suggest strongly, if you're not already following Gini Dietrich on LinkedIn, you should be. So we will include a link to her profile too. And she also has an incredible newsletter, which is where this article that we've mentioned a few times originally appeared. Subscribe to her newsletter. Absolutely. So worth your time. If marketing kind of is, within your kind of box of responsibility, you'll learn a ton from Ginny every single time. She puts an immense amount of effort into the creation of those newsletters, and the resources that are linked within each edition will be super, super useful to you for sure. Um, I don't know. I think that's
That's
about it. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, we
Yeah.
always want to leave everybody with a little nugget of information or three,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
help them along. And I think you definitely did that. So I think we've navigated the misinformation highway a little bit. We didn't get, we could probably talk about this a lot longer, but I hope that was helpful to everybody. And that's going to do it for another edition of Can You Hear Me? I'm Rob Johnson. If you'd like to weigh in on the podcast or give us an idea for a topic or a guest, which people are doing increasingly, and we love it, please contact us at our new Can You Hear Me podcast page on LinkedIn.
And I'm Eileen Rochford. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you like this show, please consider giving us a review on any of the platforms where you find our show, Apple, Spotify, whatever the case may be, because your reviews help other potential listeners find us. And we certainly want to reach as many people as we can. So thanks for doing that. And thanks for being with us today.